Senegal.
Jana tu kero basona manga jangale gita do bouger do faywa. Nge élèves te tolo ci examen linga sarla amna fita mo gëna
Sur Ecoles.
Good morning, everyone. This is Teacher Raisa back with you all. It is so wonderful to be back. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. We're going to continue our series. Today, we're going to look at a couple of figures of speech and a couple of grammatic works. And we're going to start off today with conjunctive adverbs. Conjunctive adverbs. And it's simple. What are conjunctive adverbs? Conjunctive adverbs, it's a verb that is used to join or to put together two clauses, two sentences, two adjectives in order to make the sentence to be able to understand. It's simple. You probably have two sentences and you're thinking, okay, how do I put these two sentences together? Or how do I blend it to make it able to be understandable? It's by the use of what we call a conjunctive adverb, which is sometimes called an adverbial conjunctive. And so that is what a conjunctive adverb is. And there are a couple of them. It's been grouped into probably 8 or 9 conjunctive adverbs that you can probably use to put up. I say we join to bring together two sentences, two clauses, two phrases, two adjectives, through two adverbs, two nouns, whatever it is, making sure that that sentence makes sense. And the rule is, oftentimes, these two sentences, the first one is being followed by a semicolon, and then after is a conjunctive adjective, and after the adjective, then you have the colon. Usually, oftentimes, that is how the rule is. These two sentences, the first clause, it follows by semicolon, and then you put whatever adjective, subjective adjective you put, and then afterwards you have your colon, then the second phase or the second clause, and then a full stop. It is very important, the punctuation with conjunctive adverbs. That's what makes it a conjunctive adverb actually. So the punctuation, it's pretty important. Don't mix it. It's not the comma and then a semicolon. It's a semicolon, the adverb, conjunctive adverb, and then the comma, and then the second sentence or the second clause or the second phase, then the full stop. That's often the rules. I told us that at the beginning that we have about 8 or 9 groups of conjunctive adverbs, and we're going to look at them, examples of conjunctive adverbs that you have to use. So like I said, we have 8 or 9 different categories of conjunctive adverbs, and it's important that you know them so that you'll be able to know which word to use depending on your sentence. Is your sentence a form of a summary? The sentence is an illustration? Is it a concession? Is it a comparison? Is it time-wise? Is it a contrast? Is it a sequence? It means, you know, you're following up. Is it an emphasis? Are you emphasizing on something? Is it a cause and effect kind of thing, like in a medical or a scientific paper that you're trying to write? Please be careful on the adjectives or the conjunctive adjectives that you want to use. Right here on the board, I have a category that I have put, or a graph that I put in, which are 8. I should have put the 9th because the 9th is a concession, matter of fact. The next one is a concession, you know, to concession. We'll get to that later. Let's look at the cause and effect. When you have a cause and effect, these are some of the words that you do: accordingly, consequently. So if you have maybe an experiment, if you do this, consequently you're going to have that. If you try this, it's going to have that. You know, therefore, then. Sequences are when you're following steps, probably maybe in the bakery if you're having to do a chemical reaction, you're trying to try a recipe. What comes first? First you start with secondly, you know, first, secondly, thirdly, next, finally, Furthermore, if you have more argumentations to add up, if you have like a research paper or a thesis, I want to give more arguments, you can say furthermore, in addition, moreover, in continuity. These are some of the words with the time. Time means you're trying to before, early, since, meanwhile, lately, now. That's time-wise, you know. Yesterday, that's time-wise. And then contrast, I told us contrast is when contrast is when you don't necessarily agree or you feel that there's a difference. Contrast is always a difference, rather than or rather, however, instead of, in spite of. But comparisons, when you're comparing two things, you know, there are similarities. You look like or as, likewise, similarly. To illustrate something, you want to tell somebody about something, you want to illustrate, you want to give an example in detail. For example, for instance, namely, just to name a few, typically, representatively, please change your vocabs. It's important that you change your vocabs. You know, for summary, you have briefly, merely, quickly, in summary, in conclusion, to round it up, in a nutshell. Those are some of the examples you can, you know, put in as a summary when you're concluding what you've written. In a nutshell, to round it up briefly, merely, quickly, in a summary. Emphasis. Emphasis is when you want to stress on something. You want to stress on something. You know, you want the public or the reader or whoever to understand, to grasp a particular point. That's when you make an emphasis. Indeed, of course, certainly, definitely, undoubtedly, those are the emphasis. And then what about the concession? When you're having a concession, you know, concession means you're probably granted. You can say granted. Oh, it's been granted. You know, okay, granted, still. Those are some of the concessions that you have. So you see that conjunctive adjectives are being grouped in these 9. Please make sure that you understand them, make sure that you know them, how to put them, you know, in your sentences. If you see a sentence, you should be able to identify, is that sentence a cause and effect? Is it a contrast sentence? Is it a time sentence? Is it a summarized sentence? Are you emphasizing something in the sentence? For example, let's give an example of conjunctive adverbs, you know. So we were looking at conjunctive adverbs, and I said conjunctive adverbs are conjunctions that have adverbs in the sentences. It's the mingling, it's the joining together. It's a correlation of 2 phases, 2 clauses, 2 sentences, 2 adjectives. But there has to be a correlation. There has to be an understanding. You want to make sure that those sentences, you put them together, has to make sense. You know, and I gave us a chart with 9 groups of different or various adverbs, conjunctive adverbs. There are probably many more, but I gave you a set of them that you need to use. And I want to put out here some examples. And I have here on the board 3 examples. I'm going to go to the first one. You need to focus on your studies, otherwise you fail the class. Where in the sentence do we have the conjunctive adverb? Do we know where it is? Exactly, because you see that there is a semicolon. This then goes to be the conjunctive adverb, because after that there is a comma. Otherwise, else you fail the class. Number 2, we had different opinions, therefore went our separate ways. Where is the conjunctive adverb? Here. There's a semicolon. Therefore, the comma, we went our separate ways. Therefore is the conjunctive adverb, just simply because you identify the colon, the semicolon, and the comma. And then I enjoy fruits such as banana and mangoes, such as. For example, to name a few, namely, there's a semicolon, the example, the comma, and then you name it. Likewise, Mary enjoys traveling. Likewise, her mom, as well as her mom. These are some of the examples that you could use, or that you see that it's been conjunctive adverbs, it's present in them. These are some of the sentences. Please go and be able to understand them, grasp the different examples of conjunctive adverbs, and be able to use them, which is in sentences. At the end of it, I'm going to bring out some examples and I'll have you try them at home. Thank you.
Senegal.
Jana together with son manga jangale gita do bouger do faywa nge élève te tollu ci examen li nga soxla am na fi te mu gën a
Sur Ecoles.